Welcome back to the Global Business Report on the Rise News. Remote work and hybrid flexible work schedules have existed before COVID-19, but the pandemic thrust them into overdrive. Some have suggested this has led to downsides in work habits. Take a look at this tweet from Michelle Tandler, who's the founder of career advancement website Growth Path Lab. She said, "Today I had 3 meetings. Nobody showed up prepared. One person dialed in from the car, one from the street. One said he had reviewed my product, but he had not. I'm starting to think remote work has led to some bad habits. Does anyone agree or disagree?" She continues, "It's hard for me to imagine showing up to an in-person meeting with such a casual attitude. I used to go into an office every day. I got up, got dressed, put on makeup, and put on my A game. We sat in conference rooms, we conversed, we showed up prepared." Let's go to our response. Let's go to the response to Michelle. Another tweet after this. Let's see now. "Yes, last month I was on a call with an external client, 10 people in the meeting, and their project manager did the call in a nail salon. We could hear her nails being filed as she spoke." So does Michelle have a point? Joining us to discuss from London, Victor Ekwealor Jr., technology analyst here in Lagos, FISAYO Durojaye, head of strategic finance at FinAccess. Gentlemen, good morning. So FISAYO, let me start with you. Does remote work lead to bad habits?
Of course, I think so.
You agree? So you agree with Michelle?
I agree. Well, I agree largely with her. You see, in your opening statement, you mentioned that remote work had been a thing before the pandemic, and of course, pandemic, accelerated it. But well, I agree to a large extent. Remote work was available, but it's largely limited to gigs, side gigs. You're working with Fiverr, you're working with all of those. But now it's not just remote work; it's work from home, and I think that's where the problem really is, right? Where people just take things casually, because you can literally just get up from your bed and open your system, and then you're up in a meeting. A lot of people don't have to do any from preparation, and while the meeting is going on, they're trying to catch up. Like, okay, this person sent an email yesterday. Let me try and figure out what.
They're distracted by other things.
A lot of things, right?
Yeah.
So, but when we were working physically at work, where we have to resume at work every day, right? All of those kind of excesses were to a large extent, guard against, right? So, as much as there are, pros and cons on both, right? As much as there are cons, there are also pros to it. Today, I had to show up at the studio physically here today, and of course, I had to wade through tons and tons
traffic
of cars. Yes. At some point, I had to walk. If you see me on the road, walking on the whole road, yes, I'm probably the one, right? So, wade through tons and tons of cars to get here. This kind of stress they are not necessary,
yes,
right? So, those are, where
pros
the balance really
Thanks for that. Victor, is this an irreversible trend, or do you think we'll see a return to the office? And also, what's your take as well? Do you agree that this is declining productivity, bad habits, and so on from remote work?
Yeah, I definitely. I think remote work has fostered a lot of bad habits, like you call it. And the truth is, one way to look at it is every system has people always trying to game it, right? Systems are created to, create order, but systems are always gamed, and there's nothing wrong with that. The truth is remote work is not actually for everybody, and that's a conversation that is not had more often. There's a discipline and a rigor required for remote work that a lot of people do not possess or haven't, learned yet to a very large extent. And there's one thing I always say: a lot of people that don't perform remotely will not perform in an office environment, and that's the truth, right? And if I see this being a trend for a long time, I think yes, to a very large extent, we've moved into a world where a lot of companies have fully become remote, right? There are a lot more companies that are remote, than companies that are remote. And to a very large extent, there is the issue of access to talent, and like I just mentioned now, there is the logistics required to show up in a physical office. It's cheaper for employers and employees to work remotely if you find people that have this rigor that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, it's a trend that's going to continue for a while. There's going to be all this back and forth, all these debate conversations and all this kind of thing. Conversation for another day, but yes, it's a trend that is going to stay for a very long time.
All right, I want to ask you both. FISAYO, let me come back to you, and Victor, I'll come back to you as well. The instant messaging platforms replacing physical meetings, your Slacks, your WhatsApp, and so on, and also the topic of safety. WhatsApp says, of course, end-to-end encryption. So is that also here to stay? And do you have safety concerns over instant messaging?
Once anything has digital footprint, right, there are always safety concerns. But I also recognize that while we are in the office, there are some meetings that are absolutely not necessary.
Right.
Right. Just because one boss is excited, just calls all of us to the meeting like, yes, I will stay there for 2 hours, when it could have been an email, right?
Yeah.
So I get, I get there are excesses on both sides, right, of this matter, right? So I think that it is forcing a lot more people to figure out a way to communicate their ideas without necessarily calling meetings.
Right.
So we can have Slack channels. In fact, I think in the tech community, they have this thing called daily stand-up, where all of us just come together standing so that the meeting will be quick. Yeah. Like, these are the things we're doing, these are the things we're doing. So those kind of things are things that we will start seeing happen digitally on Slack channels, on WhatsApp groups, I was going to say Twitter Spaces, but maybe not Twitter Spaces. But yes, on Slack channels, on WhatsApp groups, and via probably emails, as we continue to move.
Thanks, sir. Victor, where do you stand on instant messaging as far as meetings are concerned, and the safety issue and the encryption matter as well?
It's a very interesting thing. Every instant messaging platform says they are secure. They say they have end-to-end encryption until they are hacked, until they are subpoenaed by governments, and we find out that they're not as secure as they claim to a very large extent. There's also the safety part from a privacy perspective for the users. So there's something that a lot of people still do not know. So Slack is one of the most popular tools for collaboration in remote or asynchronous work. And a lot of people don't know that administrators of Slack, like that's your boss in essence, has access to all your messages, your messaging if they want, right? So those issues are very pertinent and they're very important concerns to a very large extent. And I feel like there are things that will be more, will come into focus more, as remote work advances. So I don't know if you remember, early 2020s, during the heat of the pandemic, when Zoom took off, Zoom shares, Zoom usage, daily active users, and all that kind of stuff. We had a lot of Zoom bombing, people basically hacking into Zoom meetings, showing up with, inappropriate materials and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of those cases. And if you check, those cases have reduced over the years, right? And it has become apparent that Zoom has done work, security work on the back end, encryption work to make sure this kind of hacks, like impromptu hacks, do not happen again. And a lot of this is going to happen with most of these tools that are used for collaboration.
Thanks, Victor. Okay, the metaverse. Why are you laughing? Meta had a creative concert, a concert recently. Tenny, all these other Arya Star, and so on. All these artists were there. You could use augmented reality and so on for meetings, for work, and they've been advertising heavily now on radio here in Nigeria. Is there any impact that could have in the future on the workplace? Virtual reality meetings or whatever.
You use the right word, future.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's a long shot. I'm not sure why Mark Zuckerberg is particularly vested so heavily in the metaverse. I think that maybe with advent of 5G, proliferation across more developed countries, maybe it's something that could work where your avatars, will show up for meetings in your place, and everybody just have the avatars in there, and then of course meetings will work. But I think that it's still a very long shot for us here in Nigeria, for us in emerging markets, for even for many developed markets as well. But I think you use right for future, I guess. We'll just
Meta stock is down, I think, about 60% year today because Wall Street isn't really keen into this. Victor, what do you make of it? I'll give you the last word. We got a minute to go.
The metaverse is a very interesting concept that has a lot of futuristic use cases and everything, but it's still very nascent. And the barrier to entry is still a little bit huge. Sometime in the last 2 months, there are reports that daily active users in the metaverse are dropping. Like, this is like non-office, non-workplace users, gamers, and people that would normally be in the metaverse. Users are decreasing to a very large extent. It's a beautiful thing. It has amazing future use cases. But for work, I don't know about its adoption, because one of my major concerns is the barrier to entry. Like, you need gear sometimes to get into the metaverse. You need all these things. It's not for the technologically illiterate to a very large extent. The barrier to entry is still a bit high. So I don't know about its adoption in the near future. I understand the use case, and especially for asynchronous work where you need to be immersed in the workplace and you're like, oh, you're not in a physical office, but yes, this gives you the feel of sitting in an office. But still, all that is well and good, but the adoption, actually getting into that place, is not seamless. And that's going to affect its adoption in the near future.
Victor Ekwealor
Work, that
Jr.
is.
Victor, thank you so much. Victor Ekwealor Jr., technology analyst.
Thank you for having me.
FISAYO Durojaye, head of strategic finance at FinAccess. Thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate your time.